So thank you, Dr. Saxton, for the great introduction. And so I don't have to talk too much about me from the get-go, but what I can talk about is a little bit about how I was before COVID, just to emphasize some of the contrasts. So before contracting COVID, I was in my early 40s and I was quite active. I've always been a little bit chubby, otherwise no comorbidities and such, and active in walking, biking. I have two little kids, and so they keep me super busy in maintaining the family as well. And so in getting COVID, like Dr. Saxon said, I was looking after one of the patients in a long-term care facility I was working in, and a few days later, I just really wasn't feeling very good and checked my temperature, and I was incredibly febrile with a 40-degree temperature. And from there, the illness progressed pretty quick over the next 10 days. I was very fatigued, spent huge amounts of time in bed, anywhere from 16 to 20 hours in bed. And this was, of course, over Christmas. I did manage to make Christmas dinner and such, but then come New Year's Eve, I got up in the morning, tried to walk to the bathroom, and was extremely short of breath, which led to going to the ER and being confirmed COVID positive. A few hours later, I was shipped over to the hospital and ended up on the COVID unit. And then the next day by noon, I was whisked into ICU, and within 15 minutes of getting into ICU, I was being drugged to be intubated and such. So having been an ICU nurse, I must say that of all the treatments and stuff that I assisted in ICU, it's never been more scary than when it's happening to you. And so, yeah, I did spend about 10 days intubated and almost a total of a month in the hospital, at which time, of course, my family was isolated because we had been all in the house together. Luckily, no one else contracted COVID at that time. So yeah, it was the end of January when I finally got discharged from the hospital, and I've been living with symptoms of post-COVID symptoms ever since. And so I guess the ones that I deal with the most and that cause the most frustration, of course, it's essentially four of them, and they all really play into each other. And so in no specific order, the four of them that I deal with is pain, specifically joint pain, fatigue, issues with my sleep, and in case any of you haven't noticed, also issues with my breathing. Before getting COVID, I could be quite long-winded and wouldn't have to take a break at all. And now I do have to take quite a few pauses while I talk. So just to describe a little bit of these symptoms. So the pain that I experience, like I said, is joint pain. I find that it's always around at least a little bit constantly. I feel it in all my joints, every joint in my hands, my feet, my wrists, ankles, knees, elbows, shoulders, and hips, and through my back. I, surprisingly enough, don't typically find it in my jaw, which means I can continue eating with no problems, which leads into other issues with my lack of ability for activity and such. But so that's one of the first things I deal with. And like I say, it's always there. And it actually gets worse when I'm immobile. And so One of the things that I constantly do is I do tend to fidget a lot more, constantly flexing my toes, my hands, and moving. And then one of the other symptoms I have is fatigue, of course. And so this has been pretty common in my experience with speaking with other post-COVID patients. And so the fatigue has been quite debilitating so far in my life. Before COVID, again, very busy guy, very active. I'd get 7 hours of sleep and I would be up and go nonstop for the rest of the day until it was finally time to go to bed. Now I'm tired from the moment I wake up, and I stay tired all day. I joke with friends and family that every day I have my old man nap or my senior's nap. So usually every day about this time, I would be laying down to try and recover. And that fatigue is, while it's always there, it's also exacerbated pretty easily. Doing things like going to get groceries and having lunch is enough to tucker me out for the rest of the day until I have my nap. And then I usually get up and I'm able to make supper, may be able to do a small activity like take the dog for the walk, take the kids to baseball, and then I'm usually pretty tired afterwards. So that's a big contrast from being able to work, 10 to 16 hours in a day and get up and go do it again. One of the other issues that I deal with is sleep. And so sleep has been probably one of the most challenging, as it's nobody feels good when they don't have sleep. It exacerbates all of the rest of the symptoms, and unfortunately, the rest of the symptoms exacerbate the sleep disturbances. Since getting COVID, I have been prescribed a sleep apnea machine, which does help a little bit. Unfortunately, due to the pain and it coming on with inactivity, the night is the worst. And so if I go to bed without taking any medications, the pain usually becomes enough to wake me up about every hour to 45 minutes to an hour, causing my sleep to be quite broken. To deal with that, I take anti-inflammatories every night, which have limited effect and such, but they do give me about an hour and a half between the pain waking me up. So I do sometimes get a little bit of a full sleep cycle in there. I do have narcotics that are prescribed to me. However, I'm a very pill adverse individual. So I really don't like taking them unless the pain is quite exacerbated. If I do take them, however, I can get about 2 to 2.5 hours worth of sleep. But unfortunately, the pain tends to be a lot more intensified when it does wake me up, and makes it much more difficult to fall back to sleep. With that, when the pain does wake me up, falling back to sleep is also an issue. So once I do get woken up, I am typically awake for about 20 minutes to 40 minutes, just laying in bed, trying to fall asleep again. So if you figure an 8-hour time in bed, I'm waking up about every hour and a half, and then still being awake for another half hour after that. I'd be lucky to be getting about 5.5, 6 hours of sleep. And of course, it being broken up doesn't help. And then that brings me into breathing as well. So one of the unfortunate side effects of COVID has left me with scarring throughout my lungs. And so it leaves me short of breath with pretty much every activity. At work, I used to be able to run up 6 flights of stairs, 2 at a time, without even thinking about it. And that's in my 40s. So I'll take that for what it's worth. Now, however, I climb one flight of stairs and I'm huffing and puffing. If I climb 2 flights of stairs, which my house has, I am quite short of breath, and it takes me probably about a good minute to 2 minutes of huffing and puffing to catch my breath enough that I can talk. So a considerable difference from where I was before. And like I said, all 4 of these main symptoms play into each other. So the the inability to do activity, or if I overdo the activity, will bring on the shortness of breath and the fatigue. That'll bring on the pain. That'll affect my sleep, and that'll exacerbate them all. And so I do go from in and out of periods of not just bad sleep, but also insomnia too, due to the pain and such. And so how have I managed this? Well, it's been 2.5 years. And on a day-to-day basis, I think I manage it poorly, but I do think many people who are suffering with this probably feel the same way. The therapists that I've had the opportunity to work with, they tell me I am managing pretty good, so I will take their word for it. But big changes have happened in my life. Currently, I'm still off work on a medical leave because I did catch this from a patient while at work. My days usually, I have a decent routine right now, which I seem to be managing in. I wake up in the morning with the family, help get my kids off to school. I take a little break after they're gone, and then I'll do things that I can around the house. So, doing things like having my shower, trying to clean the kitchen a little bit. I try and schedule all of my appointments in the morning because I have the most energy then. Plus, I need to have a nap in the afternoon, which if I don't, it exacerbates everything quite a bit. And so I try and do what I can in the morning, and then I have my lunch, I have a nap, I get up, I make supper, and then again, I do a few little activities afterwards, and then in bed about 10 or 11, if I can sleep. And so that right now, that's currently the routine that I have. Anything that throws that routine out of whack, I usually pay for. So now that it's summer, trying to maintain the yard and the house. If I go out and mow the lawn, it takes me about 3 attempts, and I pay for it the next day. And so I may be quite fatigued and spend 10 to 12 hours in bed. If I do something with my kids, such as a ball tournament, and I'm away from the house for most of the day, I tend to pay for that the next day as well. So I still do have quite a few crashes. I'm still really bad at identifying when I'm going to crash. And so I do have them quite often, probably more often than I should. I have had to learn a little bit in life too, that sometimes the crash is worth it, because I still want to live life. And sometimes I have a really bad thought about the pain in regards to, Dr. Phil was speaking about how pain can be a sign that you're in trouble. From my days in the military, we were told that pain is just a sign that lets you know you're still alive. And so I'll often ignore it, especially if it gives me a chance to be more in the moment and spend some extra time with my kids. And such. So yeah, as for management, it's been quite difficult. I've tried, when it comes to sleep, I have tried a lot of things from CBT to different therapies that have been mentioned in many books, and I'm brain farting at much of them. This is another side effect of my COVID is I do forget a little bit more and a little faster than before. And so, yeah, tried lots of different things for the sleep, which unfortunately haven't worked. The fatigue, I just have to try and manage and try not to burn myself out as much as possible. Pain, unfortunately, I do live with it most days, but I do try and manage it with the medications as I can, as well as with movement. And the breathing, well, unfortunately, it's led to a lot of inactivity. And so I guess I'll just kind of wrap up this with how it affects me. So this has been a really rough 2.5 years. I'm definitely not the person I was before in regards to my abilities. I have learned how to look for some silver linings as well, though. Haven't been off work. I've had a chance to spend a significant amount more time with my kids. I don't have to be on call anymore at this point in my life, which is fantastic. I used to hate getting calls and being woken up at night by the phone. Now it's just with sore joints. And yeah, I have a lot more appointments. I have to give kudos to the therapy teams that have worked with me. Bonnie Klassen, who's been part of the Pain Society, is my OT, and I have nothing but the best things to say about her. My psychologist has been fantastic. Some of my therapists through workers' compensation have been fantastic as well, and helped give some insight. My family doc has been absolutely instrumental in assisting me in helping manage this and such. So yeah, I guess a few other things. I've had the opportunity to take on a new hobby, and so I've recently gotten into leatherworking, which has given me the opportunity to keep my mind and my hands busy, and help keep some level of sanity. Being at home every day is not as easy as a lot of people may think it is, and so yeah, it's tough to keep yourself active and keep your mind going and such. So so with all my appointments and the leatherworking, and my dog, who I'm really surprised hasn't made an appearance, I'm continuing to try and manage the effects of COVID and what it's done to me, and try and do the best I can to have as much meaning in my day-to-day as I can, and provide my family with my presence and everything that I can. And so yeah, that's about all I have to say at this point.
Thank you so much, Adam. That was incredible. And I really appreciate, and I am a psychologist, I really appreciate you being vulnerable and being open to sharing your story. And I'm often one to say, it is all about being a storyteller. So you were a perfect example of, you are not defined by your illness. You are telling the story of getting through it and finding meaning despite it. So thank you. And I can't wait to hear from you during the panel.